Peace, everyone. I'm Zerach. All right, so I'm here with Heinz Talmud of Next Step Produce. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate this man because we couldn't veer into the world of grains without him. Back when, well, let me say a couple things. But so the first time I called Heinz, he actually hung the phone up on me. He asked me about 3 questions, and then he clicked the phone down. He asked me what was the size of my operation. I said it was 2 acres, so at this point we're growing food, but I'm contract farming for UDC, for the university here. So we were doing about 2 acres with specialty crops. And so he asked me that, and he said, well, who's picking it? I said, well, my family. He's like, that's not enough people, or something to that effect. He put the phone down. So thankfully, we know someone in common, George, who was like, man, you two have, like, you're both vegan, you both have, like, beautiful families, you should know each other, right? And so anyway, when I wrote the rice grant and it was time to grow rice, I think the rice sparked a lot more interest, or maybe it was rice from the beginning, but he was a lot more receptive to me. But I couldn't do my operation. So just to let you all know, I'll speak a little bit and then Heinz is going to take over. So Purple Mountain Grown basically started off as the Purple Mountain Organics, which some of you, we've been around like selling tools and doing different things at organic farm shows over the years. So my medical practice, when I first veered out into farming, I actually had bought a DeWitt tool from a store in Vermont, and it was a really nice tool. I was like, man, I want to learn, like I should be selling these tools, right? And I always wanted to create. Every doctor wants a side business so they can stop being a doctor, right? And so I was like, this is a good idea because, you know, it's a way that I can make money without seeing patients, right? And so, of course, later farming became like, I could farm and like and hand it off to my kids. And I was just reading a book and they were like, people had a large family so that they had many kids to run the farm, right? And so the with the tools, I started with selling tools over time. That started into community garden work, which started into eventually Bread for the City came and asked us to do an orchard. I started with different grants through the university, and so that was an acre of rice that we started the first time. And so once the rice grant went for 3 years, once that was up, we needed to grow rice somewhere other than the university. So we had land in Montgomery County. I live in Montgomery County, so we contracted another 5 acres up north in Sandy Spring, Maryland. And so I would grow for the university and still try to grow in Sandy Spring. I mean, I've grown, 1 year we leased land in Frederick County to grow some grain, and so right now we have a lease with the National Capital Park and Planning, the Park Service in Prince George's County, and we lease, it's about a 15-acre plot that we lease, and it's a long-term lease where we can actually invest in the land there. So that's kind of our compromise to being in the city, being a doctor, and you know the idea of having a farm, but you're out away from people. Like I've built a practice here, so it's always been, well, living on a farm but commuting in, that's worse. So you know, our grain production has really been, every year we do from, like, I guess if we count the wheat that we grow, our acre is probably right now more like a 15-acre operation, or at times it's 20 acres. We always have some crops in, cover crops and rotations. But every year we do like 1 acre to 1.5 acres of rice. We do 2 or 3 acres of wheat, maybe 4 or 5 different varieties, maybe 2 soft, 3 hard varieties of wheat. We also do, what else? No, you do stuff. I do einkorn.
Okay.
I've done I've done for the past couple of years like an acre of einkorn, which we have a huller. Einkorn has a hull on it, so we sell that. And so it's only been in the past couple, 3 or 4 years that we've been in farmers markets. So we never really had to sell food. I've been more of a subsistence farmer, and we never really had to sell food to pay our income. So I just became a farmer when I started trying to sell food and actually make a go at it from the food that we were selling. But Heinz has been really instrumental in all of that. And so the cleaning equipment he's basically, because you can't grow grains if you don't have cleaning equipment. You have to be able to get it out of the field, you have to dry it down, and you have to be able to store it in a good way. And so otherwise you can't really touch grains. But our operation is really like right now we do Upper Marlboro, that's our main farm. We do, I still do, so the acres in Upper Marlboro are sandy ground. And it's a good sandy ground. It's a lot to work on, but the acres in Sandy Spring, that's like the Piedmont. Somehow with grains like wheat, we do way better in Sandy Spring than we do on the sandy ground. So I think I'm going to continue to like cover crop the one plot and do different grains. I'm hoping to be able to do like 3 or 4 acres of oats there. So we've been doing another one that we do every year is like 2 or 3 acres of oats. I've done up to like 5 acres of the hullless oats. And but we do everything that we do is because of Heinz. We just started having our own storage space. Before, we've always relied on Heinz even for storing our grains and piggybacking off of what he's done. So I'll be here. Heinz will talk. He's talking about his equipment.
Oh, thank you for everybody thinking that I have something to say. Anyway, a little quick who I am, where I'm from, and then Next Step Produce, a little bit of our approach, and then to why we are really here. So anyway, I'm born and raised in Switzerland. Oops, wrong flag here. It's sort of funny, first time I was in the States with some Vermont ski slope, and everywhere I saw that Swiss flag. I couldn't figure it out. It's the Red Cross in Switzerland. And here, the Red Cross, the flag is trademark. So you could not indicate a first aid place as a Red Cross as you could do in Switzerland. So as I said, oh, they must be all Swiss fans, but they're not. They just couldn't violate the law. So anyway, Swiss flag, and then next one. It looks like I have a hard time seeing the picture from that angle here. Do you have a picture of me? Can you guys see the picture? Because I can't.
A little bit.
Should we close that window?
Yeah.
You can't, they're motorized.
Yeah, unfortunately that's broken. We've been trying to get it down all day. I'm so sorry. So this is the best. We're gonna work with what we got here.
Oh, that's gonna make a damper.
Can you see it over here?
Oh, you can take off the lights.
Flashlight.
Take off the lights.
Yes.
Take the lights.
But it's very much geared around my.
I'll do my best. Let's see. So that
That's a technical difficulty we should have expected, huh? Shoot.
You should just explain
Yeah,
what
just-
you see.
Oh, I can't see it myself.
You come and explain it from the screen.
Oh, that's gonna add another whatever. Well, anyway, you're supposed to see a Swiss landscape here with little rural areas and the mountains in the background. So that's the landscape I grew up with. And if you would see it, you would see a certain beauty in it. Next one. So, no, and then somehow the university computer got it out of order. So there's another landscape, mountains in the background, which just make you a quiet person by nature. If you speak with people in Colorado, they're always in awe, not because pumpkins are. Oh, and by the way, English is my second language, so you may have to. So no, this is actually a picture of the farm I grew up. The foreground, those cows are my brother's cows. Next one. And here's my brother walking his cows to the pastures. And my daughter she's in Switzerland this spring for the first time visiting it. Next one. So it's sort of fascinating. Switzerland is one of the wealthiest country in this globe. You know, like their minimum wage makes your living wage look like entry. But they still have maintained enough of a pastoral lifestyle that in the spring they walk their cows up into the Alps using public roads. So there's a bunch of cows, and that's usually an event where the farmers walk their heifers and their cows up into those alpine meadows, which are, 6 foot of snow in the winter months. I think we have 2 of them. So there's another one. As I said, it's like, can be a 4-hour walk with the cows. And you will not find that here anywhere. So, but anyway, that's that kind of background I came from. Now, there's 2, so you couldn't tell, well, he grew up in a different box. You grew up in your little box, like with that box, like when you do word association. I say movie, you say popcorn. You say, talk to a Swiss guy, you say movie, he thinks ice cream. Because in Switzerland, when you go to the movie, there's an intermission. And then they sell you ice cream. So our associations are ice cream with movie. And here it's popcorn. So anyway, so that may explain why I solve some of my problems differently. So, next one.
Now it's popcorn because you grow popcorn.
Can you? No. The next picture was where we are. So there's a map. You see Washington, D.C., you see the red spot. We are down in southern Maryland. Sandy soil. Same problem. We started out, low organic matter, less than 2%. And for the first, and I'm there, we moved there 2020. And for the first 10 years, I couldn't touch it. We were able to maintain it, but now some fields we are above 3.5. So there's a layout of my farm. And as you can see, I'm somehow imitating that Swiss landscape of little parcels. Now, Raphael, you want to have that so you can see the frequency? Now, back in Switzerland, I'm born on a farm, but I also did a farming apprenticeship. That is sort of a controlled schooling where you work on a qualified farm, but once a week you go to school, where you learn things like crop rotation, fertilizer plants, animal food ratios, stuff like that. So that is, like an immigration officer once told me, here in this country, you grab a shovel, put it in the soil, and you call yourself a farmer. I was not quick enough to say maybe that reflects the state of the farming. But in Switzerland, if you want to have that, piece of paper saying you're a farmer, you have to go through schooling. So anyway, I went through conventional schooling. Next one. No, it's this picture here. In '78, I just came out of my apprenticeship where I learned chemicals. I came across this article. It's a German weekly. The headline is, "Are the farmers poisoning us?" And man, I just come out of school and they tell me it's all good. And yeah, I read that and then say, it really, rubbed me wrong, but I read it. And I had to agree, yes, the farmers are poisoning us. In retrospect, I also would have to say, well, by having put the farmers on the lowest part of the totem pole, we probably lost a lot of the intelligent ones, and now we just listen to the extension officer because we are not smart enough to come up with those chemical concussions we're supposed to use. So we are just part of another industry now. So are the farmers poisoning us? I had to agree reluctantly, and that led me to the path of does organic work? And then my journey years were on organic and on biodynamic farms. Now, with biodynamic farming, it sort of goes back to 1920. It's sort of has a spiritual dimension to it, but one of the base principle is to create a self-contained system. There's a lot of farmers, organic farmers, they have a certain understanding, which is a water-soluble nutrient understanding, an NPK understanding, and that become organic and replace urea with whatever, blood meal. Nothing changed but the ingredients. The mindset, the paradigm has not changed. So, like to the question, there was a question in one of the other workshops, people want certified organic versus, if you can be certified organic, but you still might use 120 pounds of sodium nitrate. And at the same time, you applied about 30 pounds of pure salt, pure sodium. And then you wonder why you have chickweed growing through your roof. Because you changed electricity in your soil. The conductivity is too high. So, anyway, next picture. 2000 was my first year at Next Step Produce. When you start a new endeavor, I think it's good to have a guiding principle. That guiding principle can be as simple as, I want to make money, and that's actually the easiest one. If you succeed is all a question, but that's the easiest one, because if you always will shop for the cheapest ingredients, the price will always, if that guy sells something for a penny less, you're going to go from there, because if you want to make money, the less you spend, the more it's in your pocket. So my understanding, or my logo was committed to growing nourishing food. That's that whole nutrient aspect. And how do I do that without being at war? If you use your Roundup out there, you are at war. If you use your biological, you are still at war. It's how do I do that? Call it more in a Buddhist approach. That doesn't make me into a Buddhist. Nothing wrong with that. But that was my guiding principle. How do we remineralize so we can have the potential of nourishing food? And how do we do that without being at war? Now the beautiful thing is, once you get your soil in balance, once you get your biology there, your insect pressures, etc., goes way down to non-bothering. It's sort of a good path to have. Once you got your mineral balance, once you have your biology, etc., your insects, if you've done it well. As a neighbor, he was always having harlequin bugs. We haven't done anything about them for years now. It's the same thing like 4 or 5 years ago, or no, that's more than that. When we had the marmorated stink bug, very first year, you couldn't see that squash plant. And I think now that we don't, even thrips, all those things, they don't, we're pretty good. Fusarium is a little bit other issue, but we haven't had fusarium issues for quite a long time. Even in the year we had extreme wet spring, and my baker says everything needs to have a dawn test, etc., we were good. So, other than one hybrid rye, and we dropped that one. So here we are. Here's our farm. Now, there's some reading recommendations. The Organic Grain Grower by Jack Laser. It should be on your bookshelf if you're growing grains. It's sort of a talkative approach. Has good things to say. There's a couple of weak spots. He doesn't talk seeding density. He doesn't talk fusarium management, etc. But Jack Laser, the Organic Grain Grower, get it from Acres. It's your best price if you don't want to support Jeff. So the Organic Grain Grower. Organic Field Crop Handbook, Canadian edition. The third edition is still the last edition. Get it on some used bookstore. That's where your web savviness comes in. So the Organic Field Crop Handbook. The Intelligent Gardener, it goes into that whole mineral balancing. Yes, it is for the gardener because he basically says we farmers don't have the money to do it right. But on the other hand, if we want to live up to that, food is your medicine, we are the doctor, we need to talk that language. So that's a good introduction. The next book, The Ideal Soil, it sort of gives you the pathways of how to do your oral, you get your soil test back, how to do your own recommendations. Actually, the people who publish the Intelligent Gardener, they have a website where there is a program on there which is a good starting point. What else? He talked about dirt. That sort of hammers home why you need to address those things. We are, like in the Piedmonts, we are on eroded soil. Like, the USDA has maps of what part of the US is depleted in what. Like the whole East Coast is boron deficient, the whole West Coast is selenium deficient. Now, like early on I said I'm from Switzerland, now the whole Alps are iodine deficient. That's when you eat, buy salt in Switzerland, it's fortified with iodine. Iodine deficiency leads to goiter. Like niacin deficiency leads to yes. So there is enough. Don Huber had a book about mineral deficiencies in plant. They're all different books, or to really hammer home, it is your responsibility to add it. Yes, I know Elaine Ingham talks about it's all in the soil, but she never talks about how many years it will take you to get it back into the system. She doesn't, it may be longer than you live. So what your food ate, that's what he talked about. The similarity between how the biology in the soil and the biology in your belly work. So what your food ate, next one. That's common why we're here. Mechanical seed cleaning and handling. That's a USDA handbook from a long time ago, but it tells you about all the tools I have and more. And you can download it as a PDF for free. That if you want to do some serious seed cleaning, that's the reading. Sorry, no flashy cover here. But okay, so.
Do you want to do the compost?
Yes. Now, as a farm, when you do your journey years, you go to different places and you learn different things from different masters. And then when you create your own, you try to implement the best of what you learned on different spots. That's why you did those journey years. So you can then do the best decision on that piece of land you're at, and different pieces of land. Like you move to whatever, Michigan, whatever, some muck land, 10% organic matter. You just talk about sustaining. You move to Southern Maryland, 1.5% organic matter. You talk restoration. The new word is regenerative. But 20 some years ago, we talked sustainability. Then we realized, well, if you're an anorexic man, you can't talk sustainability. You need to gain weight. And it's the same thing when you are on 1.5 or less than 2%, less than 3%. You need to gain weight first. So we make compost. We make finished compost. So there's a straw bale picture. Straw is one of our resources. Now, we make plant-based compost. The benefits of it is, like, straw is my resource. And plus my previous farmer there, he used dehydrated chicken shit as a nitrogen source and loaded my soil off with phosphorus for the next long time. So if you use animal manure, after a number of years, which may be 10, which may be 20 or 30, you will have mineral imbalances, most likely phosphorus excess as well as salinity excess. It will get your system going faster in many ways, but you will have to do your soil test to see where you stay. Like with my system, there's a time where I have too much potassium in my ground. So we use straw as a resource. We have that manure spreader. I put it on, cut it in half with a chainsaw, and then we spray it out. We used to have a bale processor, but it only made it that high. The manure spreader makes it higher. So we use straw as our raw material. Then we add the water, and then we add leaves. That was the year when my forage wagon busted and I had to do it with the bucket.
You actually use a bucket?
The one in my forage wagon busted and I couldn't use it, so we used the bucket. It's all get mixed together. Moisture management is the most important thing. And then we add clay from a pond excavation for the clay humus complex to come about. Clay has other benefits, particularly if your CEC is high, that it will absorb the ammonia escaping in the plankton process. Now I did then find out that the CEC on my clay is like 3 or 4, which is pathetic. That's all weatherized clay. It's all clay. It's the CEC is just not there anymore. It's as bad as sand. We are so of the things we're importing on our farm is basically leaves. This year we imported a lot of wood chips, and then the next thing is rock dust. Rock dust is to address your general micronutrients. And for rock dust, there's a guy up in Vermont about 20 years ago, John Hamaker published a book, The End of Civilization. And that sort of basically looks at the tectonic system, it looks how soil eroded and how Mama Nature. But remember too, I am old enough to have been exposed to the whole Gaia Sophia philosophy. James Lovelock, all those are all people which we don't hear anymore. I'm old enough. It's like the bell-bottom pants were still in fashion when I was a kid, and now you're not called dead in those things anymore. So we import rock dust by the truckload. That's probably my single biggest expense. Yes, we most of it is a basalt, which is a volcanic ash, high in silica. And then this year, for the first time, we felt that the number of fields, we need to address calcium and phosphorus. So we imported a product called Spanish River Carbonatite up from Ontario. It ended up to be cheaper than the stuff from Florida. Now, when you have to address phosphorus as a mineral, the stuff I get it from is rockdustlocal.com. He read that book 20-some years ago and he ran with it and identified local rock sources which are suitable. The problem is your local rock may be that it's high in mercury, high in arsenic or cadmium. So you have to just sort of watch out. And like with phosphorus, the soft rock phosphate, the most heavy metal is out of Idaho, and then it's Tennessee, and the least is Florida. So when you do that remineralization, have that in mind. Look at the arsenic level of the product you have. Because if you ever want to grow flooded rice and then your level come back so high that you wonder if you want to sell it or not. So anyway, address the whole rock dust. But then also if you're buying, copper, manganese, boron, there's another one. And molybdenum, yeah, we're speaking the same language here. And that all goes through the compost. So, anyway, next one. We make 8 of those piles a year. So we're applying it depending on the crop.
How long is that, huh?
50 yards. Something like that. We apply, depending on the crop, 10, 15, 20 tons. Like rice, it's 20 tons. Small grains, usually 15. But remember, we started out at less than 2%. And with that plant-based compost, I come up with a low nitrogen compost, which you could say, well, why do you want to do that? But in the old school, you brought up your organic matter by importing it. When you do it in your cover crop incorporation, when you do the math, even at 100% conversion, you only may have 0.25%. That's at 100% conversion. And then you learn that if you can save 10%, you're doing good. So to bring up your organic matter fast, the old approach was imported like in compost, and that's finished compost. The new way is more the biology. 80% of the earth biomass is under your feet. It's in that 1 gram, in that 1 gram of soil. It's 80% of the earth's biomass is under your feet. And if you bring that through maximum production, that's your fastest way. That's, I think, why within the regenerative movement, animal-based systems have a way faster increase of organic matter, and I think the biggest reason, not necessarily is because of the hoof, but because you have a plant cover year-round. Versus when we do seasonal grains, there's always a 2, 3, 4 week window where there's nothing going, and then you plant it, and there's still not much going for quite a while. And if you plant late in the fall, it's 80% exposed all winter. So we have into compost. So we started out with strictly vegetables, and then we added fruit. That's what we do on the vegetable fruit side. From turmeric to kiwis. Oh, there's muscadine grapes, strawberries, etc. So we are diversified. But again, like years ago, an extension officer told me, if you want to make a living growing grains, you need 750 acres, and you need to spend $750 million to just get going. And that was also the time where the guys told me you cannot grow quality bread grain in the Mid-Atlantic. So we I guess we set out to say, you're right, or I can prove you wrong. So that's what we do on the fruit side. That's what we do on the grain side. So that is, that's my other daughter, that's sweet sorghum. Within the local food movement, we still have weak spots like sugar, spices. Nobody really addresses that. Nuts, there's nobody I know who addresses nuts. I mean, we have some things like black tea, like Yapun is addressed. Other things, actually, we just planted a whole bunch of Camellia sinensis to address. Give me 5-10 years to see if I can come out with a decent green tea. But, there's pearl millet. I can't see it too well.
Look at the other
beans.
thing, Hans. Look at this one and explain.
We do popcorn, and it's actually interesting. That man came for a visit last year and brought us some of. No, that was not you. That was Train. Train came for a visit from Tennessee, brought us some of Quevedo flint corn as grits, and then my wife made polenta out of it, and she says to me, Heinz, that tastes better than yours. Power of a woman. So we switched over to flint from an OP dent. So next one. So that's grains we grow, and I separated them in fall, summer, spring. Let's say one of the problems we have is there's too much of the market wants mostly hard red winter. But you cannot create a system, a rotation system. It's just planting hard red winter. And the other problem is if you do hard red winter and you start to get vetch in it, or like I have a couple of fields with cornflowers in it, you are in sync. And they're going to be more and more and more. So you need to create rotations as a preventative. But that then also needs the market for it. And we have no really end user baker here, which I know a conversation I had with Jonathan from Sayul years ago is, Jonathan, you cannot just buy hard red. You need to buy the other things for me to create a sustainable economic system and a sustainable growing system. So, and I also mentioned the varieties. A lot of those varieties we have a close relationship with Sayul. We have trialed many different varieties, and the ones that gives me the most positive feedback and yield well. As a farmer, yield pays me. As a baker, flavor sells his bread. And we need to come together. And with Sayul, I think we have come a really long way in creating that relationship. So like Ukrainka, that's a variety I started out with less than a pound. Amplified it, so we amplified many things. Vermont Reed, that's all amplified. Like the rye, we grew a Abruzzi. The protein is at least 2% higher than Dunkel or Haslet. The flavor is way better. But weak straw, larch is 2 years of like 95% whatever larch, and we sort of had it. We grew Dunkel, but as I said, 2% less protein. And then Jonathan gave me a 35 millimeter can full of rye seeds, and he said, hey, I had some visitor from Austria, and he says, you Americans have no decent rye. Here, try this. So It's still 6 foot tall, way better straw strength, flavor, everything is in that Abruzzi range. So that's one we did, and as I said, then spring planted Fowler has always good feedback. But you see Alice, it's a hard white winter. Jonathan prefers it way more than Appalachian white. I think the elasticity, if you want to make whole repeats across Alice, is the way to go. But I need to create rotation. So we amplify Edison as a hard, Joe as a soft, and then like the Durham, the Hurani, the Hurani goes back to the pyramids. I have a connection as a seed saver out of Vermont, and she gives me things, and I will grow them out. If Jonathan gives me good feedback, then we run with it. But the Hurani first year, Fusarium heaven, but it seems less and less and less. But that may be a 4 or 5 year thing. And that may also go back why my grain is awful expensive in a number of people's eyes, because well, that goes back when I was in that Swiss military. I was reading Henry David Thoreau, The Duty to Civil Disobedience. It's a good place to read such books. And his statement, the best government is the least government, still holds true for me. And as a farm, we either create a system where we constantly depend on a nanny state, or we create strong independent farms which need the support from the consumer, from the baker, from the pasta maker, etc., etc. So don't hesitate to ask what it costs you. So, Kamut, the Kamut is the one we're gonna do decent production now. On the barley, there's a lady gave out Tibetan, we gave up on it, too much Fusarium. But the Ethiopian Arabian did very well. So anyway, next picture. Seed cleaning now. That's your primary machine. That's an air screen cleaner. That's your entry machine. That's your starting machine. That's what you need. I have one from Bench Industries, 2 sifts, and in most situations, 2 sifts will do. There are situations, some of them have 3, some of them have 4. Like we just cleaned some sunflowers and we had to really grate them. A 3 or 4 sifter would have allowed me a high cut, a middle cut, and a birdseed cut. So there are some benefits, but sunflower is a new crop for us, and I'm not too sure. The huller will cost me $12,000. But what the beauty on sunflower was, it's a bird magnet, and the drawback really. But because we grow rice and sorghum, those used to be the bird magnets. And having the sunflowers, it spread it out, and for a long time they were just on the sunflowers. So we probably lost half of the seeds out there to the birds, but we brought home more on rice. And we charged more for the rice than for the sunflowers. So the air screen cleaner, it basically, when you look at it, you have the hopper where it goes in, and there it falls over an air screen. The one from Bench Industries has 2 air screens. There's another air screen back here which takes out a lot. Somebody asked me about the clipper. The older clipper only had 1 air screen. I feel the second one really makes a big difference. You want to show me the pictures of the... So with the sifts come in round. They come in 1/28 inch increment. After a number of years, you'll have quite a selection. So they come in round. That's generally your scalping. That's the top sift, where you take the big straw, big stuff away. And then the next one, the lower one, is like on grains, we use a slotted. That too comes in 1/28 inch increment. So you can really find that middle ground of just throw away what you need to throw away and save what you can sell. And then for beans, we also have what's called crosscut, a cross slot that we use to take out split.
He doesn't have to do that much anymore because of me.
Well, we got a lot better. I know the first years, the amount of splits we brought home was just pathetic. It's just okay. So next one. The newer machines use sort of bouncy balls underneath the screen to keep the screens clean. the old clippers, etc., they used the brush going forward and back. It sort of goes back to, you buy an old clipper for $100 or a brand new bench for whatever, 10,000. Where you want to spend the money, cleaning the safes, or as with everything in farming, you spend the money or you work for it. It's just the way it works. So the bouncy balls. So another picture of it, and generally, okay, we harvest, it comes home from the field. Now with the harvesting, it's sort of an interesting dilemma. The more wind you put out there on that combine, the cleaner it comes home, but more of the seeds you don't, which become weeds, you leave out there. And I've seen, pictures like other farmers who have actually a wagon behind that combine collecting the chaffing to get those seeds off. But also like, whatever, you harvest a summer grain and you have amaranth in there. You want it to go through the combine and leave it out, or you want to take it home and create animal feed out of it. It's a high protein thing. So when it comes home from the field, we always let it go through the air screen before we dry it down to get, like wet spring. There's one time we had like 30% ryegrass seeds in it. And the wheat may be ready and your ryegrass seeds are not ready. So even if your wheat will be low moisture, by the time it's in that hopper, it comes home, you may be at 20-25% moisture, which means that within 12 hours, it will heat up and you're gonna get mold in it. So when but also from rice, we are used to bring home at whatever, 28%. If you do buckwheat, you gotta bring it home at a high moisture too. So you need, we felt we need to have that ability to dry it down quick. Now it's the drying down, that's less than 120 so you don't lose germination and flavor, etc. If for animal, you can go up to 180. So, next one. So we created actually we have a large box and a small box where we have a fan, and those are axle fans. They can provide pressure, like just a window fan cannot provide pressure. So we need a fan which can provide pressure. Then we have a wood stove which generates hot water. So we have the hot water coming from the wood stove where they go into the box. There's like a radiator. And if you know how to solder, then you're using a truck elevator, radiator. If not, go on some outdoor wood stove place and buy a radiator who has regular plumbing hookups. So that's called the plenum heat exchanger, and then it goes underneath a false floor, next picture, which is 1/8, which, as you can see, we grow yellow mustard as well, which the smaller ones clog it up. But you need some false floor, so you push the warm air from below, and in most situations, if you put it in the evening, I can take it out the next noon and go on to the next crop. It depends a bit. If you're above 6 feet and high moisture, it's going to take you a lot longer, particularly if you then have to dry it into a rainy season, but you don't need to harvest the next day.
Where is your thermostat for that air going in?
On the small box, I have a thermostat just after the heat exchanger, and then I have a valve that can throttle. On the large system, I cannot get it way above 110 anyway, because there's so much air moving through it. So you could say the radiator is undersized, but I also would say that my stove is way undersized, and I have a 180,000 BTU stove.
What's your target
The
target temperature for the?
less than 120.
Okay.
The whole idea with heating the air is by lowering the relative humidity, the air can absorb the moisture out of the grain. So in other words, if you have air at 80 degrees and 90% relative humidity, there's only a little bit of moisture it can take up. But if you bring that up to 100, you lower the relative humidity. That means it can take on more moisture out of the grain. That's the whole idea. Now, next one. This is my dryer, they're called batch dryer. So I put a batch in it, and I dry. The drawback on my system is it dries from the bottom up. By the time the top may have been maybe at 12%, my lowest part may be 8%. That's the drawback of my system. Purple Mountain got a Japanese rice dryer, which also works great for small grains, and that's called a recirculating batch dryer. There's a system who keeps recirculating, and it's actually a beautiful machine. Other than it uses fossil fuel, it has a single kernel moisture meter in it. You set it at whatever you want it. You walk away, make sure the tank is full, and it will shut off at whatever 3 in the morning and 10 in the evening. You know, you set it. So it's a beauty. But the problem with those things is you translation issue a bit. And before COVID, I think it cost him to bring a container from Japan was like $2,000, and now it's like $12,000. So COVID was a really good way to skin people. So, and as I said, his system has heat.
No. Before COVID, to bring in a 40-foot container from Japan was usually we bring in a high top, so that's more like $6,000 or $7,000. Once COVID happened, it got up to over $30,000. It is back down to around 11 or 12, but it's way more expensive, especially if you're buying used equipment and you need to justify the cost of the container versus what you're actually buying. You don't want to spend more on shipping than you do for what's in it.
So, next picture. No, that's not. It's a grain tube. Overview.
With your dryers, like what's the capacity of the recirculating one, and yours, what's the capacity?
Mine is, well, I have two. The small one is like 50, 60 bushels if I don't want to exceed 5 feet.
Yeah.
And my big one is 66 bushel per foot depth. So if, but if you're a big guy, yeah, it's too small. But then you would sort of talk what's called a, I forgot the word. A continuous flow air dryer, a continuous flow dryer. But there's no small scale version. This here is of a tube you put in your super bag and you just pull in air. If nothing else, that will prevent it from heating up. If your product heats up, you will have mold and the whole other issues of insects going in, etc. So that's, if you knew you want to experiment the thing, that's a $300 investment. Or you just harvest a couple bushels and you have a big table, you can spread it out. But if you harvest something before a week of rain, even if you put that in the greenhouse, your moisture is 100% in that greenhouse and it will do nothing. Like there's some Asian dryer out there for rice where it's like a solar tunnel. It only works when the sun shines. That's my thing. It only works when the sun shines.
So this allows, we can harvest 2 or 3 fields and dry one at a time. Like that Japanese dryer, so you ask how much, if they go in stones, so that one's 9 stone, that's the smallest one you can get. And it goes up to, they just stack them. Yeah. So it can go up to a pretty huge capacity. And
here's 1.3 cubic meter if you want to speak the language.
So, but we can bring maybe 2 or 3 different grains, like he said. When it rains, you got to get stuff out of the field when you can, and so we can use something like that until the dryer freezes up.
Now the other thing what comes in is if your wheat is ready there, whatever, 20% moisture, and it's ready, it has a maturity, and there's a week of rain, you're better off bringing it home at 20% and drying it down than waiting the rain out and losing your falling numbers. If you're after high quality bread, you better take it home wet and dry it than waiting it out and then having just cooking material. That's my experience. So that will prevent it from heating up. If you can, if you can fill a super bag reasonable well, That will prevent it from heating up. But if you want to dry it down, it will only happen once your air moisture in a relative humidity drops. It will not do much when it stays in at 80, 90, 100%. So, next one. So, dry screen. Okay. Now, go back one to the air screen. No, we had the air screen picture. Okay. When we have enough of the big box, it goes to the air screen cleaner, then we have a bucket elevator, brings it straight up, a belt conveyor, which brings it into my drying box. The beauty there is it's all under the same roof, and then when I take it back out again, I can feed it straight back into my air screen. So belt conveyor up on top, next picture, and so that's the end of the belt conveyor up on top. And let's say you want to dry beans, if you drop them more than 6 feet, 8 feet, something like that, you start to have splits. So that thing going down is like, it's called a bean ladder, so we slow down the drop. So when it hits the ground, it's not from a 12-foot drop, but it's from a 6-foot drop. So a conveyor and the bean ladder, which I was too cheap to spend money, so we made it. Okay, next one. So that's the box. There's some buckwheat coming in. Buckwheat, we direct combine, and that generally means, the plant is still green, so it's gonna come above 20%. And that means dry it down fast. So next one. Then, particularly in the summer, we harvest all the small grains, and then we double crop. The dry beans, millet, sorghum, all that needs to go out ASAP, because every day delay cuts, means it matures more into the fall, which means your cover crops don't go out or your follow crop doesn't go out, and your bird pressure increases, and your drying, good windows decrease. So we put it in a storage, and that storage we use a room we cool down in the low 50s. Insects just don't reproduce in the low 50s. So if you don't introduce them, they probably won't be there. And if they come in, it's just too cold for them to reproduce. The very first year when we didn't have the storage, we had Vivo problems, stuff like that. If you need to air dry it down, you have vetch in it or something, your chances of insects is gonna go way up. So we put it in storage, which is in the low 50s and dehumidified. And generally you create in a room which is more or less mousy proof. And that's going to be one of your bigger problems, and that's something you always have to be vigilant about. One of the problems with mice is, whatever, this mouse poison works for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you need to rotate it, etc. So the old-fashioned traps are still, the butter still does the trick. So what we harvest in the spring goes in there till usually September, October, when we catch up with the field work, and then we need to start cleaning to get, to be able to reseed. And at the same time, there's a number of voices who says, fresh off the field, the enzymatic activity is too high. You need to give it at least 6 weeks, if not an 8-week resting period for it to just calm down. So if you harvest today and you bake tomorrow, it's more likely a failure, because enzymatic activity is just too way high. Nothing to do with falling numbers, etc. But Jonathan had that experience. Some old folks say that, and I am not willing to sell you whatever 50, 100 pound bag, and then listening to you, I sold you a joke. So now let's look at grain cleaning. So I choose Hollis Oats because it's more complicated. So harvest, air screen, drying box, temporary storage. And then with Hollis Oats, let's say, you buy them from Albert Lee, right on the pack, you just will have up to 5% unhulled in it. If you have that product and off your field, and you leave those 5% in it, and you sell it as rolled oats to a high-end restaurant, they're gonna tell you about that scratchy thing in here, and you may be history. So when we clean oats, the first process is called a debeater. It's basically a tube. Well, it's a debeater because, well, the other thing, oats are the most dusty thing. I think when they say peeling one's oats really means the dust got to you and you couldn't stop scratching. I think that's what it really means, because oats are dusty. So we put an aspirator, which is the place that sucks the air, and then as always, you start out low, you end up high and end up low. So an auger to bring it back up again, and then it goes through the indent cleaner, and you gotta look at pictures, which removes most of those unhulled ones back into an auger, air screen cleaner, which we take, big seeds and the smallest ones away, back to a bucket elevator, gravity separator with an aspirator again, bucket elevator, optical color sorter, and then we have a magnet somewhere in your system. Particularly if you use those AC60s, etc., those all crops. If you have a 60-year-old machine, you need to have a magnet somewhere in there. Even on the brand new ones, it may just be some washer which will end up in your mill, and you're not going to appreciate that. So you will have to have a magnet somewhere in that system. So let's look at the different things. Well, just here, that is with vetch, wheat with vetch, etc. Same thing, drying, auger, indent. Now the indent has a different drum where we take, the indent I have does a good job on common vetch. It does a great job on hairy vetch because they're much larger. The Carter Day disc separator can do similar things. No personal experience. If you find one cheap and it's set up for vetch, it's worthwhile looking into it. Auger, air screen, specific gravity. And on the gravity days, a side trap for a destoner. Say you have your large oats, chances you will have a rock in there, which is the size of your berry. If you have a big rock in there, it comes out before. If you have a little rock, it goes out somewhere else. But it's the rock identical to your berry size, and that's what the specific gravity can do, and that then goes off the destoner, where we then save the good ones and take the rocks out. Then we use an optical color sorter to get this colored off, bagging, storage. So that's the flow for. Oh, and then we hear the flow for dry beans, which originally we used the color sorter. That was my argument to spend that yearly income on it. But how do we say that? We bought it. There's a place down in Texas where we bought it from. I went down there, 3-day training in how to program that thing. What they forgot to tell me come with an optical imaging degree. I go there and say, what is a pixel? That's a bad starting point. You better have a really good idea how optical photography or the new photography works, so you can understand the language. So the 3 days was not enough. I can do good programming on simple stuff, let's say black out and white. But when we start doing whatever, tiger eye beans, you have different colors, or multicolored beans, it becomes a little bit more difficult, particularly if the screen is a black and white screen and you have to hit it and it tells you that, so much white, so much yellow, so much blue, so much red, and then you need to translate that. Oh, that means orange. So, but I had to do a job cleaning. What was it? Guy brought me Bloody Butcher, and he wanted the yellow kernels out. Well, you have to change the color from whatever white to blue, and then several hours later, we sort of realized the timing was off. The air injection was off. So I recognized it, but he didn't kick it out. And it took me a while to figure that one out. So it took me 6 hours to program that thing. But this things I've done in 10. So anyway, when you buy one, make sure what the dealership is. If they have a guy who will come. So that's sort of the workflow we have. It doesn't show the very beginning with the polisher. the debeater and the indent, air screen, bucket, the search box. Like an air screen you can use with 1 pound or 1,000 bushels. It's not sensitive. You just have to regulate the flow. But the gravity, you need about a bushel on the deck for it to work. So you need to create a search box, something on top who you accumulate things. When you have enough, then you start your gravity, so that thing works. And then you just need to throttle or increase the flow on the air screen to keep up with the gravity. So it becomes a big juggling mechanism. So and then it goes on to the color sorter, bagging stations. Let's hopefully the next picture is a picture of the polisher. Here is the polisher. It's really just a machine with some knobs in there which rubs it against each other till the dust falls off. That's all it really is. That's what a debeater or polisher is. It just rubs itself against it. As I said, for oats, I think essential to get probably 80% of the dust off. If you have your combine wrongly adjusted and you bring back a lot of unhulled, it will do some job on the unhulled to loosen those hulls. Those are the two uses. And before we had an aspirator on there, you may have had that much dust. So that's the polisher. That's a picture of the aspirator, which sucks the dust away. Works really well, and that container below that fills probably within a couple hours with just dust.
We've got polisher take off the
Polisher will take off.
activation circuit.
It probably would. No experience. It probably would. But the diatomaceous oils you use to prevent bugs, I would probably more, depending on the controlled storage or the whole CO2 stuff. Super bags loaded with CO2 so the bugs can't live in there. Or Nezerac has some grain bags now, which you can inject CO2. So. Which you can put in 50-pound bags, etc. if you don't use the super bag system. So it's a scale issue, but he would be the man for smaller advice in smaller things. So. But yes, he probably would take a good amount. Yes, most likely. So here coming out of the polisher, it looks a lot cleaner. You also see the dust, but you still see all the hard ones in there. So then from there, auger back into an indent. Augers. It's they got invented in Rome, not in Rome, in Greece. It's just an old system. The front one is homemade. It's I have a good machine shop close by. He made the big things, but you just buy the auger, make it to your length. Next picture. So the auger, it just brings it up, and the next picture should show you. You then need to have sort of a sense of how fast you want to let it run. If you run it too fast, you start to do damage, particularly on beans. So you have all of my stuff is on 3-phase. 3-phase with a variable speed drive lets me control the speed, and that lets me then control the feeding rate into my next machine. And it's sort of interesting. 3-phase motors are a lot less money than 220 motors or 2-phase motors, and the difference you can then spend on that variable frequency drive. And then, as I said, right angle reducing gearbox, so your augers don't run too fast. And that's all homemade, other than the tube I had, my machine shop well. But the rest, it's all homemade. Variable frequency drive. It allows you, it controls the speed on your auger, which then controls the speed to your air screen, etc. It's all, if I can do it. So, okay. You see the indent cleaner here, coming out of the The debearder going up is the auger into the indent. Now the next picture should show you what an indent is. The indent, you basically have a drum. I have a small one. They come larger, but that one here, it's a lab model. It is about 30 to 50 bushels an hour, which is the same speed as the rest of my system. You want them to be somewhat matched. So the indent, you have and I can change the drum by myself. There's some large 6-foot drums. You will need a 2-person job to change those drums, and if you have a lot of small jobs, that's a pain in the neck. So I can change that in 5 minutes. So the indent, you see little thimbles in there. So basically like if you do vetch, the vetch will get stuck in that thimble, and the whole drum rotates. So as it rotates, the vetch being stuck gets carried further up. Go back a picture. And falls into that trough in the top. And the weed which doesn't fall in it just slides down. When we do it with oats, we do it in reverse because the unhulled oats are longer. So we use a thimble which is big enough to hold the hulled ones, but not big enough to hold the unhulled ones. So we get a really good separation with the indent on oats. And then if you have a lot of unhulled ones, you can just let them run through the debearder. That will take the easiest stuff off, or we then let it run through the roller huller from our rice operation. So we can then unhull those and let them run through the system. So back into your auger, into the air screen, and so there next one. You take the too small stuff, the shriveled stuff away. We take the large stuff away, which in the oats was mostly some larger wheat seeds, and then all the chaffing gets blown away. So we have some small reject, which are mostly small berries. If you would also have mustard seeds and stuff in there, that would fall out here. You can then argue you re-clean that, save the mustards, and you have the seeds for your next cover crop. Chaffing, that's all sort of empty hulls, straw stuff, etc. Next one. And that's a large reject, and as you can see, there's very few oats in here, but mostly some wheat seeds which I haven't identified. But we took it out. And then it goes back into a bucket elevator, which is just a bunch of little buckets on a belt which go in a circle. And they go fast enough, and they go on top. It just throws it out into a different chute, so it then goes back, pulls down into the next machine, which is the surge hopper. The next machine for us is the gravity cleaner. So next picture. So as a picture of the surge hopper, as I said, we wanted some material so we can fill that gravity, so it runs smooth. Next picture. Here it's in operation. Next one. And then we come back to you. So we basically have a deck here, and the deck has a dual slope. That's one slope where it's fed here and it goes down, and then we have a side slope. So we have a double slope, and then there's a screen where we blow a massive amount of air from below, which lifts everything up. And at the same time, that deck vibrates sideways. So you see those ribs there? So what is light gets lifted up more than what is heavy. So that means heavy will hit the vibration more than light. And that means heavy will walk up. And that means light will stay down. Can you go back to one picture? So you see a slope here. It's not very big, but enough. So all the big stuff, heavy stuff will walk out here, and all the light chaffing stuff will stay down here. Like your white caps will stay down there, for example. Your heavy fusarium infected stuff will stay down there. Or if you have, corn, if you have, cob pieces in there, they will definitely stay down there because the size, we can't, the air screen is really a size separator. So if they have identical size, here we separate it by specific gravity. So now go back. You see the rock trap? So it's fed here from the surge hopper And all the heavy stuff, your rocks, for example, will walk straight over here to that rock trap. Metal water will do that too. So next one. So you see a little opening there. So if you have a field we're generally confident it's clean, there's no rocks in there, just one, we just keep it close and just open it here and there and just let the, check if there's any rocks, and if there's no rocks, then we don't worry. If you have heavy rocks, or if you do dry beans, or let's say you have large buckwheat, you will have rocks. Yes?
Do you get any separation of the unhulled oats on the gravity table?
The problem is the grain cleaning is there's no such thing as a straight line. There's black and there's white.
Yeah.
In that sense, in life, there's white, there's black, and the rest is all gray, and sometimes you barely see black or white. So the indent may do a 90% job. So if you come with way less into the gravity has to take way less out. So basically, you could then the unhulled, the indent misses, the very large ones I take out with the air screen. And then again, yes, they will walk down to light. That gives me again another opportunity to take them out. And then the color sorter is also programmed to take them out. So if when you do long enough grain cleaning, you sort of realize that 90% clean looks like sometimes like junk. But there is such a diminishing return, to the very first cleaning off the field. That takes away probably 80-90% of all the impurities. And then the last 1% or last 0.5%, you spend more time or as much time as everything else before. So now, just there, if you then are your own miller and you sift it, you will get away with murder, because you sift it all back out again. But if you want to sell to a baker or to retail as berries, you may have to go through all that expense to get it to that 99.9. But if you sift it, if you mill it your own stuff and you sift it, all purpose, whatever, you will get away with murder, because the customer will never know you had not frog legs, but grasshopper legs in there.
How much do you change up the order of the machines depending on crop and year and what you're
Well, there's certain things which are bolted to the ground. Like the gravity needs to be bolted, or you spend a lot more money with a counterbalancing system. It's the same thing on the air screen cleaner. There's a vibration. You either have a counterbalance mechanism, so they're anti-vibration, like people who have who do custom cleaning and go to the farm, they would have it all counterbalanced, so it doesn't it doesn't just vibrate off the trailer. But if not, they need to be bolted to the ground. They need to be bolted not to a wooden floor, but to a concrete floor to absorb all that vibration. So no, like the air screen, the gravity, the color, they are solid. I can move in and out the indents, the polisher, I can move those things in and out. The velvet I can clean in and out. But the rest, that is bolted, and that you have to design around that.
And your conveyance, it dictates the order every time, like the way.
If you talk to the seat dealer, for example, he likes to see the air screen first, and then the rest after, and then the gravity. But by the time I learned that, it was already bolted down to the ground, so I was not going to rearrange it. And I've not really seen drawbacks of having my polisher up front, for example. And just in regards of the amount of augers I have, that the way I have it laid out works well for me. So anyway, rock trap, which takes the heavy stuff out. Next one, which then shows us with the destoner. I remember when I did the research on them, I talked to some company about, and they were selling it to dry beans guy, and he sort of said to me, so what's the percentage of rocks? And I don't know, maybe 1? I said, I have farmers who bring home 10 and 20. So if you windrow your beans on some rocky ground, you may bring home more rocks than you ever imagined. So it depends a bit. So with a rock picker, if you have a lot, you would have a big one and let everything run through the rock picker. If you don't have a lot, you use the rock trap and just run a little bit through the rock trap, through the destoner. So the difference is whatever, $10,000. If you need a big one or a little one. So my system works for me. So off the rock trap, it goes into the little destoner, which is basically a gravity cleaner. It's just a single slope. So the barriers, the light stuff go down and the rocks go up. And that too is, you can adjust the slope, and then the vibration is a variable frequency drive. So you can really fine tune that you get all the rocks out and very few. So next picture. So there's a picture of that's on the rock trap. You see all the little pebbles in there? Now I just admit that I have rocks in my, that I was having that combine too close to the ground. But as I said, if you had something lodged, you hit that groundhog hole or didn't see it, or through whatever, your helper is sweeping up and puts a bunch of rocks in there.
A super sack breaks on your gravel driveway.
Those rocks are not from my gravel driveway. Yes.
You mentioned windrowing beans. Do you windrow your beans, or is there anything you windrow, or do you take everything standing?
If I would find a windrow or a 12-foot bar and pickup reel, I would purchase it so that we can do more windrowing. Like if you have a really weedy patch or whatever, spring oats, the windrowing is going to do your trick. With the beans, we grow 2-3 acres of beans. Most of them are direct cut. The ones we do hand pull some because the quote I got for a rodder and undercutter was like $20,000. I can hand pick for a long, long time for that kind of money. So it's a scale issue, but
we Heinz does and I do. We pull acres of beans.
Not acres, we pull more than we like.
Yeah.
But if you want to do some specialty beans, whatever, kidneys, black turtles, your direct combines. The Pinto variety, we have your direct combines now. But Tiger Eyes we pulled, Southwest we pulled, and we still have some horticultural out there which I would like to pull, but I haven't found the helpers yet.
You can avoid all that hand pulling, just use a little glyphosate.
Now the hand pulling comes in is because
It's the weather.
it just puzzles me how much breeding is done to get those pods higher off on the plant. You have too many pods touching the ground, and that's where the hand pulling comes in. The glycophosphate just helps you to uniform maturity, but it will not take the pods. And if you have that prehistoric combine, you do not even know what flex head means.
So with the beans in this area, we get like an uneven dry down, so the stalks are still green, the pods, and if it keeps raining, the beans might grow more, set a whole nother set on the top, and the ones on the bottom are already drying down. And so if you got those pods touching the ground and it rains, then it could wick up that water and all the beans in those lower pods will sprout out. And it ruins the whole thing. So I just lost a field of beans. What was it, the hurricane that came through here where it rained for 5 days? I had a green patch, which was maybe a quarter acre, but one of the beans that we should have pulled, and it was green, and I was like, I was gonna try to combine it, and I said, let me let it sit out there, and it ruined it. 5 days of rain was too much. So now it's a lot more handwork on the backside.
Coming back to the oats here, after the gravity, it goes back in the elevator into my color sorter, which is basically, we can take these colorations out. It with the color sorter, for every 2 bad ones, it will kick out a good one. For every 100 bad ones, it will miss a good one. So And depending on what you need to program, you may or may not succeed in really good programming. Like the machine I have, it got better now, but in the beginning, the technical advice absolutely sucked.
Can I say something about all this? Just
You're already interrupted.
I know. I need to. Because I import a lot of Japanese equipment, and I use Google Translate to use it, and he really gives me a hard time for it.
It doesn't help you. You
But
look
he
at-
bought a Chinese machine, and then he's figuring out.
No, it doesn't help you. You have an
Translate.
image of that berry, and you need to tell what part of that berry is bad. And if it's black and white, you need to understand the lingo,
Right.
whatever. So many pixels are yellow, etc. So that's where I'm struggling.
So it's not a language barrier.
No, it's not a language
Okay.
barrier. It's an education barrier. So, as you see, there's also the recheck side. It's another conveyor, and then on the other side, it goes into the belt conveyor, on which we have a magnet. Next picture. There's a picture of the magnet. So we're talking massive magnets, not refrigerator ones. Because you want to suck, so you want to open it, and as you can see, you see some stuff on there, mostly from, for a long time we had an old crop 60, then we switched over to a 90, and now we updated the John Deere 3300, but that thing is still 40 years old and it still rusts away. So that's on oats. That's the finished product. 99.99 maybe, but there's no 100%. If you want to achieve 100%, you will have to rerun it twice or 3 times, and there's a huge diminishing return. Okay, so bagging station. Again, you can spend the money and get a fancy one, or you can do it this, old-fashioned way. And by that time, I guess I run out of money. But it's also easy to move around. And then the storage. I said low 50s, humidity controlled, and in the process, if you close the door, you have a more or less rodent-proof environment.
For your cooler, you just using cool bots with air conditioners or what?
No, it's as I said, if you look for somebody endorsing the CoolBot, I'm the wrong one to talk to.
I use CoolBots.
And he endorses it, so talk to him about it. But if you have a 10 by 10 room, that's a different thing than if you have a 20 by 40 room. Okay. So now we have a friend of mine is in HVAC, so but I have had no problems with it. But there's a huge argument because you have a dry storage and you're in the low 50s. If you're a flower grower, low 30s, 100% humidity, CoolBot is not worth the money. It's not gonna do it, particular when you depend on it. But here, if you have a small room, whatever, 10 by 20 or smaller, yes, I think you will get away with it. But if you're talking bigger than that, and then also you bring in 5 super bags at 80 degrees, and you want it to cool down in less than a week, the CoolBot is not gonna do it. So I'm not. Talk to him if you want to hear a positive answer. That's with everything. You talk to the guy who says what you want to hear.
No, the CoolBot works well. Our CoolBots for grain, where we have a dehumidifier in the room, works better because the CoolBot is at 50 degrees, but most dehumidifiers are putting out some heat. So. But the one that we use for our grain works much better than the one that we try to use for vegetables, where we get the whole freeze up and everything. So I think CoolBots at a higher temperature work pretty good. Yeah, we're almost up.
You steered me in the right way on oat roller machines. As far as a similar scale indent cleaner that would fit in well with somebody using an air screen cleaner as an additional step. Do you have any ideas on, it's always hard to find the right scale equipment on stuff like that.
Well, the one I have is a Premier. I think it's Canadian made. It's their lab model, and it's sort of the slow spot, the bottleneck in when I do oats. Or also like with veg, if I have heavy veg, it's sort of the slow spot, but the next step up is so much bigger and
So
it's
much
the
bigger.
2-person, so.
Yeah.
But because I don't have endless time, when we do the veg part, the indent there's again, no machine will do 100% job. So when we have veg or radishes, the indent will do a good job, and then we take out the rest with the color sorter. But you have a good percent of good berries in it. We let that run through the spiral cleaner, which then the thing is the spiral cleaner, as you can see, there's like a stairway going down. When you buy one, you send them a sample. And they tell you, that's the angle you need and the slope and all that stuff, and you will do an excellent job. And then next year, whatever, you bury is a little bit plumper, and it doesn't do an excellent job anymore. So there's times I think it's an amazing machine, and there's times I think it's just not doing it. And that all depends, as I said, they come in all kinds of slopes and angles and stuff like that. So if you just buy one, you may get a good deal, and you may be happy with some stuff, but you may not be happy with some stuff. A and B, that's one with 2 shoots. That would not do 30 bushels an hour. So if I would let everything run through that would be increasing my total time spent by probably 4. So I would need at least, I think, a 6 shooter to have a similar capacity. So my way is the indent and the color, and then just run and recheck through the spiral. And then whatever is accept in the spiral, we run through the gravity and we do the air screen just because it's the easiest to add.
So you mostly use that to get like veg out and.
Yes. It doesn't do a good job on radishes because they're too jagged. So there's a picture now, as you see, it feels down, you see the spiral going down. Round, next one. Round just rolls down the inner chute. No, oblong runs down the inner chute, and round slides down the inner chute, and round rolls down, and in the rolling process accelerates, has a higher speed, and the centrifugal force will throw it out. It's as primitive as it comes, and it's like a big rain stick. It's fascinating.
It's awesome.
But it's what I have is way undersized. That's why we have it at the end for the recheck. Yes.
I'm curious. It seems you both have such a really deep understanding of these tools, and I'm curious, kind of like about as you use them more, you notice like these different nuances in certain products and certain kind of outcomes. How does that inform like the tools that you pick, and also is there a way for that feedback to go back to then improve those tools? Like, is there a connection between like you guys as growers and then also like the folks who are making those tools?
Well, like the gravity I have, that thing is whatever, 30 years old. I mean, they have the newer ones are digital path and all that stuff. So they did the improvements. I couldn't do anything on the bench on the air screen I have. I did mention to like Mike, hey, that's what I would change for an organic grower. You need a bigger thing here, a bigger thing there, because we just we bring home too much stuff from the field. So the rest, as I said, a lot of it is old stuff now, and it has gotten improved by itself.
And then I guess to that point, right, because it is expensive to constantly like buy the new innovative tools, are there other measures that would be able to kind of enhance what you have, like ways for it to be like a tool add-on? Like I'm thinking of like 3D printers, and they have certain things that you can design something that can go in and improve. Improving what you already have.
Well, if I can see where to improve it, I already did it. Like adding an aspirator to the polisher. That was a huge improvement. But also having the gravity. When I looked at the picture, you see welding spots where we changed something.
Okay. Yes.
So.
I hear the engineering aspects. So I just wanted to ask more about that.
So, okay. What other pictures do we have here? Okay, that's rechecked in that moment from the spiral. As you can see, we still have some wheat berries in there. And if you're in search for vetch seeds, I most likely can help you.
1 minute.
Next one, and that's except from the spiral. So, and that's on wheat berries, soft. So, and the beans. Let's quickly go with the beans. We used to use the color sorter, but with the changing variety, went through the pre-color sorted area. That's called a velvet cleaner. You have rolls covered with a velvet material, where again in the slope, and the velvet will pick up rough porosities, splits, rocks, clods, and kick them out. So that's the old methodology before the color sorter. And with the color sorter, if you just grow kidneys and you have the guy programming it, you're gonna be happy. But if you grow 6 different varieties and every year you change them, remember I spent 6 hours programming that thing to get yellow out of red. Okay. Velvet, the rolls close up. And that's the last picture. My daughter made all the picture. If you want to support her, her website is Faye Photography. She makes, you could sell or buy her Swiss calendar on that thing right now. Question, and then it's your responsibility if you run over of time. I just finished in time.
Have you ever heard of a Sosnowski seed cleaner?
Yes, and Stone Barns has one. They really praise it. I remember a conversation with Mike from the Seed Cleaner. He said, wait a few years and you can buy them for pennies on the dollar.
Well, we bought one about 5 or 6 years ago. It was about $2,000, and that's what I clean the green stuff out with.
It doesn't take vetch out.
Probably, no, it wouldn't. No.
It wouldn't take vetch or radical. So it all depends. You feel on that slide looks clean. Then, the cleaner you bring it home, the less stuff you need. So you could say, I just admitted that I have a lot of impurities in my wheat, which I have to take out. So you can judge the farmer by how much he needs to clean. And in that very moment, I'm not a good farmer.
Do you have issues with garlic bulblets?
Second?
Garlic, little bulblets from
Color sorter. Greater Richmond Grains, there's 1 year he came up and then took them out, and then next year he had them again, so he bought his own color sorter. So the color sorter will take them out. Or you leave them in the bin for a year, let those shrivel away, and then you can use the gravity.
Will shipping storage container work well for refrigerated storage if you insulate it? Is it adequate?
Yes. Yeah, in my situation, the drawback on the shipping containers is they're long and narrow. If you have a lot of different things and it's all the way back there, and that's the drawback on it. But if you have 1 or 2 things, put straw bales around it and a top around it, put a cool bar on it, I'm sure you're gonna be happy. So it's all what you got. What are your resources? You buy a good one for whatever, a couple $1,000, and they deliver it, and you could. I'm not gonna be against that. It's all what you got. How does it fit in the system? Like my storage, I can be raining heavy, and I can go in it, and I don't have to worry about anything. So it's all what works for your situation. Okay. Are we good? No.
You said something about, going back to oats, you call Alberlee and get a bag of oats, and it's 5% hold, holds on. Why does that matter?
If you're seeding it, it doesn't make a difference. Okay. Some of the conversation, is not good enough for baking. Seed it.
I would say it does make a difference, because if it's 5% in there, those 5% are going to keep reproducing, and you wouldn't want to really be selecting for the ones that.
The question is, yes, if it's a combined adjustment. So the worst, the cylinder or the speed could have been higher and would have done a better job. There's different explanations.
Plant difference.
Yeah. So I don't know, but as I said, the stuff you get from Alberlee has 4 or 5% anhalt in it. and it doesn't buck them, but they also half the price. But my stuff goes to rolled oats, whatever, you know, as I said, you sell stuff to Storm Barns and so for seeding, you know, it's what I'm saying, it's like, you know, Dawn numbers are too high, seed with it. And then you hear different opinions, you know, it's seed-borne, it's not seed-borne. I used high Dawn stuff for seeding and had low Dawn the next year, so I don't have enough experience to give you the definite answer. Supper is waiting or something like that. No, are we good?
Thank you.
Did it help something?